This morning, I'm being joined by the CEO of Budget, Seun Oniwinde. Seun, good morning to you.
Good morning,
and thank you for coming in. We've been having this conversation ever since it came into public space about the states that are owing, and what the federal government, what the states and the federal government were doing with regards ensuring that these debts were paid. Now, but what do you think that this will mean for the states? There's a new restructuring. There's bank loans for bonds, if you like to put it that way. And just like what Dr. Wanko talked about, he says the state's monthly debt service burden drops by a maximum of 97%, and they're getting this at single-digit interest rates.
Yeah, it's always been the discussion to say, since oil prices have come down and allocations to state has also reduced significantly, the biggest challenge also has been the debt service, because most of the states, the loans they took from commercial banks and also the bonds they raised were on the short-term basis, and you can't blame the commercial banks because the inflows from them to their own coffers are also short-term. So this has always had the overhang, the debt overhang has been huge. The debt servicing cost has been high. For example, a state like Osun State spends close to naira 45 million naira on a monthly basis to service debt, based on the bonds it took. And now that's excluding what is even serviced to commercial banks within the state itself. So I think it's a right step in the right direction. It's unfortunate that it's loose and there are no stringent conditions attached to it. Because now we'll spread the tenure over 20 years. Maybe debt we were supposed to pay over 18 months, now over 20 years. That means we'll keep hemorrhaging future revenues for the next 20 years to pay back this debt. And also we ask, what were the quality of this debt? What were they taking for? We have not taken any lessons from this at all. We just basically just moved on again, which is, to me, it's more tragic.
Well, why do you think it's more tragic? Because you see, this debt dark cloud was hanging over the states. We saw some of those states being unable to pay the workers their salaries. We saw them unable to complete some of the capital projects that they embarked on, and individuals such as yourself, made so many comments with regards to this, with regards ensuring that the states complete the projects and actually pay the salaries and, have something sufficient in their coffers to run the governments with. And so this coming at a time, one would expect everybody to be quite excited about it, even though we do not totally we don't totally know what it's, the finer points are for this FGN bond. Yeah,
it's exciting because in the part to say workers would get their salaries back, and also some things would get more. But the question is, and you can excuse the new governors that are just in, because invariably they didn't take these loans, they didn't make these decisions, and now they found themselves in this very dangerous situation where they can't even function. And so, to be fair to them, it's fine, but I think we also need to pass these lessons across to them when it comes to fiscal responsibility. A lot of states take debt for things that are very, very wrong. Number one, we have a short-term thinking that pervades around governance. Everybody just takes loans just to excite people and to run populist scheme.
So let's talk a little bit about that. That's what we have right now, on the screen. Some of the states and their debts. So we have the highest, of course, coming from Osun State with 88.6 billion naira, Delta State 69.8 billion naira, Ogun State 55.4. These are the debts that were turned into FGN bonds. Now, looking at that list and seeing how much some of those states have, raked in, do you think that putting up these debts into bonds, restructuring them from debts to bonds will make more states incur debts? Because, like Dr. Wanko said, it's open to all 36 states and the FCT.
Yeah, it makes them more liquid. That means the deductions at source, it's more reduced. But the question I've always asked is, now it also gives them the room to take more debt.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
so
but the problem
if you have more, if you have this opportunity of having your debts, written off in the FGN bonds, there's a tendency for you to want to amass more.
Yeah, we want to amass more because the FGN is going to take the flak for this. The bond will be issued by the federal government. It adds more to the debt portfolio of the federal government. That means the states now directly owe the federal government this money. And so the problem will still keep pervading, because we need to be able to tell states that they need to improve their fiscal responsibility. What do you borrow for? That's the first question we keep asking ourselves. You don't borrow to build social programs. It's not been clearly stated to most state governments. You borrow to do self-liquidating projects. Projects that, on a normal, according to the plan, can pay back itself. So you build a road and the PPP structure, and it's told, it's understandable. You build a cocoa factory, a processing plant, and you know that we are going to turn this around into profit. Then you clearly borrow to do that. It's only taxes you use for social redistribution of the income, to say we're going to tax these people more so that we can build more schools and more hospitals. But because we lump up businesses, for example, in case like Ocean, borrowed to build stadia. That was the former governor before Aregbesola. He borrowed to build 6 stadia that were uncompleted. You know, and so the questions will always keep being that when it comes to who does the appraisal for the quality of the step, because a governor comes in, wants to excite everybody, wants to make everybody believe in him that he's working, and goes overboard and does these things. He doesn't consider the interest rate that he's paying. He doesn't consider the tenure. He doesn't consider the shocks that could happen to the commodity that is underlying, because the commodity that underlined all of these assumptions was oil, and doesn't consider that the pricing for that is not dependent on even the federal government itself. And most of them have not been able to grow their IGR at a significant level. For people who want to borrow, I think the IGR should be benchmarked against borrowing, not fiscal oil revenues. Because if, for example, Lagos State has, even though it's the most indebted state in the country, but if you benchmark it against its IGR, close to 23 billion naira per month, it should show some level of wiggle room or fiscal responsibility. We have states with 600 million naira IGR per month, 800 million naira per month, and taking bonds of close to like $30 million. We need to be more responsible, and that has to be more clearly stated out.
So in talking about fiscal responsibility now, even though we've got this FGN bonds on ground, do you think that some states should still begin to consider taking out bonds outside of the FGN bond?
I think, I won't say nobody should not take that. I would say you can go ahead and take that, but think through it about the quality of debt you take. The debt you should take should be able to pay back, or should be an investment on what you're trying to do. That has to be very more clear to states. Don't take debt to pay salaries. It's terrible. It's poor fiscal analysis. You know, don't take debt to do large social programs, build huge schools, because you feel you want to excite the people. You know, if you were raising those from your VAT share, if you were taking those even from the oil share, it's fine. But when you're taking debt, you know that the impact or the hemorrhaging of future will spread over a longer period of time. Very, very clear that these are things that could pay back itself, you know, and that's more responsible. So if, like example, a Lagos State takes debt for the Badagry corridor road, the trail is doing, makes sense, because you feel on the longer term it's more structured in a way that it could, you know, the revenues that you expect from that place will be able to pay back in the long run. But if you go ahead and take that to, you know, build fancy projects, they just exact problems. It's a problem. It's going to be to you.
Now the DMO talked about a 20-year tenure. Will this not affect subsequent administrations? Like you pointed out for Osun State now, for instance, the governor before Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola had taken out, you know,
18 billion naira
to build 6 stadia, which most of them haven't been completed. And so this new FGN bond, of course, will definitely affect subsequent administrations. Yeah,
it will, but it's something they couldn't shy away from, because you look at the scenarios on ground. Scenarios on ground are there. Some states haven't been able to pay 6 months. In fact, some parastatals have not been able to pay for 9 months. And this is not only about Osun State. It's in Oyo, it's in Benue, it's all our Kogi, it's all scattered around the country. And the question one needs to ask is, we need to just make, and sometimes we need to ask this state, are you going to cut salaries? Because sometimes, and that's why I say we have not allowed the lessons to be fully learned by taking this route, to say, the revenue you get from the federal government, and also the IGR you get within the state, what share of it should go to your recurrent expenditure and what share of it should go to your capital expenditure? We need people who can put up scenarios. Oil prices today have continued to drop and continue to fall, and we don't even know when we're going to
about 44.77 now.
We're going to know when we're going to scrap the bottom of the barrel. So the question we ask the service, how much? So because we still continue again with the same civil service, the bloated civil service structure. Unfortunately, maybe the salary should just no matter you need to get by in the normal society. But the question is, do we want to have a wage bill of 4 billion naira in a month, or 3.5 billion naira in a month, and your revenue from the source or from the federal government is just 3 billion or 2.5 billion naira, and you don't do a good IGR? So the question every state governor should go back and ask, how do I expand my IGR? And this is not a short-term decision. This is not something that we would put in money this month, and next one our IGR just shoots up. You can tighten the revenue leakages and make sure that you get all the collections right. But the question is, how do you create wealth? Because it demands that you create wealth to tax it. How do you create wealth that is taxable, and you can use that to raise your IGR? And that's the question everybody should ask. And until we ask those questions, we can't go forward, because we'll keep padding the problem. So next 6 months again, we run to another fiscal crisis. Then we'll do what again? Then we issue bonds again. We can't keep doing this. They need to do some structural adjustment in terms of their personnel, the payroll, the revenue structure streams. They need to do some lot of work around the overheads, the procurement. They need to do a lot of work around transparency.
Yeah, you mentioned cutting of salaries, but you see, that's not what's a lot of workers want to be hearing right now, especially, in light of the economic realities that we have. We're talking about food prices have been rising steadily. We're talking about global oil prices affecting most of the revenues that these governors get, and most of what is actually, eventually paid out as salaries. But do you think they should be thinking about that at this time, talking about restructuring pay for workers?
Yeah, we need to go through that route. And also because sometimes they don't have the moral justification to do this. So you have a governor with maybe 20 cars in the convoy, too many numerous 8 doing nothing. You have, basically, so they don't show that moral leadership to say we want to enforce workers to cut salaries. And so until we begin to show, so now we have these new governors, said, you expect that they will buy new cars, new Prado cars, new Jeeps, new entourage is going through here, and you understand how much do we even invest in all those statecraft so we at times the way the governors also leave. We cannot enforce moral leadership to say we want to cut salaries. But I think it's some hard choices that we have to make. We're between two ropes. We need to make those hard choices.